These were 9 experienced backpackers.
You're telling me that they all got severe hypothermia at the same time on the same night?
In 1959, 9 Soviet university students embarked on a hiking trip into Siberia's freezing wilderness, but never returned. New information has recently emerged regarding the Dyatlov Pass event, calling into question the commonly accepted avalanche scenario regarding their tragic deaths. According to these new discoveries, no avalanche occurred, raising serious questions about what actually transpired that fatal night. Join us as we explore this fresh perspective and go deeper into the unsettling circumstances of the Dyatlov Pass case.
Странное исчезновение в горах Северного Урала группы американских документалистов.
The Dyatlov Pass event occurred in 1959 when Igor Dyatlov led a group of 10 explorers on a difficult skiing journey through the Soviet Union's northern Ural Mountains. Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, gathered a group of classmates and friends for this ambitious adventure. Their goal was more than just recreational. They wanted to attain Grade 3 accreditation, the highest level for Soviet hikers, which required a 300-kilometer walk through challenging terrain. The party was well prepared, with each member having a Grade 2 hiking certificate and ski trip experience. On January 25, 1959, they left Sverdlovsk, fully prepared for the adventure. But fate had different intentions. Shortly after starting, one member, Yuri Yudin, became ill with rheumatism and a congenital heart problem, causing him to return home on January 28. Little did he know that this decision would eventually save his life. Despite Yudin's departure, the remaining 9 proceeded on their trip, aiming to conquer the northern Urals. They traveled over tough terrain and encountered harsh weather conditions. On January 31st, they arrived at a valley leading to Dyatlov Pass, where they prepared for the ascent. However, a strong snowstorm diverted them from their intended course, bringing them to the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, also known as Dead Mountain in the local language. Despite the harsh weather, the crew persevered, apparently driven by their purpose. As night fell, they made up camp on the mountain's exposed slopes, braving temperatures below -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Exhausted and chilly, they took refuge in their tent. What happened next is still a mystery. The specifics of the next days are few, gleaned from camp journals and later inquiries. When the group failed to report for a scheduled check-in, their relatives and authorities became anxious. On February 26th, search teams found the group's abandoned and damaged tent on Kholat Syakhl. The situation was perplexing, with the tent partially collapsed and blanketed with snow. All of the group's possessions and shoes were missing, and the tent appeared to have been cut from the inside, indicating a quick escape. As rescuers followed the group's trails, they discovered the bodies of other members dispersed throughout the mountain slopes. Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin were found in postures that indicated they were attempting to return to the tent. More victims were discovered more than 2 months later, buried beneath several meters of snow in a gully deeper than the pine tree near their tent. The investigation into the Dyatlov Pass disaster has spawned a slew of ideas, ranging from natural causes like an avalanche to more sinister explanations like military involvement or even paranormal activity. Despite considerable efforts to find the facts, the exact circumstances of the accident are unknown, making the Dyatlov Pass incident one of the most lasting mysteries of the 20th century. The investigation and aftermath. The Dyatlov Pass incident is one of the most perplexing in recent memory. Igor Dyatlov led a group of 9 expert hikers into the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia, but they never returned. The examination into their deaths revealed a succession of mysterious incidents that have piqued people's interest for decades. When the hikers failed to return on time, a search was initiated. Rescuers discovered that their tent had been seriously damaged. It was partially collapsed, coated in snow, and torn apart from the inside. It appeared that the hikers had fled in panic. The tent included neatly arranged shoes, clothing, equipment, and partially prepared meals, indicating that the group had been abruptly interrupted. The first two dead, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko, were discovered 300 meters from the tent, near a small fire. Given the temperatures ranging from -25 degrees to -30 degrees Celsius, both were only wearing underpants. Krivonishenko had burns and a piece of flesh in his mouth, implying he had bitten his hand in anguish or despair. Medical testing proved that both died from hypothermia. Several days later, Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin were discovered dead near the tent. Dyatlov and Kolmogorova appeared to have died while attempting to return to their tent. Slobodin, like the others, perished from hypothermia after suffering a small skull fracture. The placements of the remains indicated that they were disoriented and struggling to return to camp. The mystery increased when the final four hikers were discovered in May after the snow had gone. The remains were discovered in a valley beneath several feet of snow. Medical exams found uncommon and serious injuries. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol had a badly damaged skull. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had significant chest fractures resembling those from a vehicle crash. There were no visible wounds connected with these fractures, indicating tremendous pressure. Dubinina was also missing her tongue, eyes, lips, and facial tissues. Zolotaryov and Alexander Kolovatov were missing brows and eyes. Forensic scientist Vladimir Vozrojdeny concluded that these injuries were likely caused post-mortem by the remains being in a fast-moving stream. The official inquiry determined that 6 hikers perished from exposure to the cold and 3 from deadly injuries. There was no proof that anyone else was involved in their deaths. There were no traces of fight, only the hikers' footsteps. Investigators were further perplexed by the tent's interior and the hikers' items. Some thought that the local Mansi tribe may have assaulted the group for infringing on their territory. However, this notion was swiftly disregarded due to a lack of proof. The lack of defensive wounds or signs of a struggle, combined with the unusual injuries, made this hypothesis improbable. The possibility of a wild animal attack was also explored, but rejected due to the lack of physical injuries. The hikers' clothing was discovered to contain radioactive contamination, which was unusual. Some theories proposed a covert Soviet military experiment or a nuclear accident. Several hikers helped with the cleanup following the 1957 Kishtim nuclear event. It wasn't apparent why the clothing was so radioactive, and the potential of a failed weapons test lingered. The unusual circumstances surrounding the Dyatlov Pass event have spawned a variety of theories. Some of the more exotic include Yeti attacks, covert KGB operations, and even otherworldly involvement. Witnesses reported odd lights in the sky, increasing concerns about UFOs or military training with parachute mines. Lev Ivanov, the case's lead investigator, stated that his team observed flying spheres but was told to disregard these assertions. The case received further interest in 1990 when Anatoly Goshin's book, The Price of State Secrets is 9 Lives, argued that the hikers had been victims of a Soviet secret weapon experiment. While the book was critiqued for supposition, it drew additional attention to the case and inspired previously silent witnesses to come forward with new evidence. In 1999, the Dyatlov Foundation was founded to continue the inquiry and honor the hikers' memories. Yuri Kuntsevich spearheaded the effort to collect and analyze all relevant data, with backing from Ural State Technical University. Recent developments in the case: in 2019, Russian officials renewed the investigation, concentrating on theories involving avalanches, slab avalanches, and hurricanes. They discovered no indication of illicit behavior. However, the fresh study was inconclusive because there were apparent remnants of the tent and no snowslides were found. Some specialists are suspicious of the avalanche theory. Another current theory holds that the hikers were trapped in a failed Soviet ballistic missile test. In 2023, new data suggested a failed rocket launch that resulted in a nitric acid cloud. According to this idea, the toxic cloud generated bewilderment and anxiety, prompting the hikers to escape their tent and eventually die in the harsh cold. Despite the different possibilities, no single explanation can explain for all of the unusual aspects surrounding the Dyatlov Pass incident. The strange deaths of these 9 hikers continue to puzzle and amaze scholars, prompting continuing studies. This case is still one of the most perplexing and unsolved mysteries of the 20th century, with serious injuries, extraordinary radiation, and the lack of human action leaving many questions unanswered. Avalanche theory. Andrei Kuryakov, deputy chief of the Prosecutor General's office, declared in July 2020 that the deaths of the Dyatlov group were caused by an avalanche. Independent examinations and computer simulations conducted by Swiss experts corroborated the theory that an avalanche was the likely cause of the catastrophe. This answer shed light on the odd happenings of that tragic night. Kuryakov hypothesized that the group's peculiar conduct was in response to the possibility of an avalanche. Experienced mountaineers confronting such a threat may act accordingly. The group's abrupt decision to abandon their tent, seek cover in the woods, start a fire, and construct a snow shelter followed basic avalanche survival procedures. Their expertise of avalanches probably prompted them to fear they were in immediate danger, driving their hasty evacuation. Benjamin Radford, an American skeptic, likewise rejected Yeti hypotheses, claiming that the Dyatlov Pass tragedy was caused by an avalanche. Radford believes the group panicked when an avalanche blocked the tent door or when they feared a threat from one. Unprepared for the cold, they retreated to the woods to regroup and build a fire. Their clothes, left in the tent, was lost to the elements before they could collect it. Although these explanations are appealing, the avalanche theory contains flaws. This theory is called into question because there are no traditional avalanche symptoms, such as disturbed snow or debris. Several excursions to the site following the occurrence found no conditions conducive to an avalanche. Detailed topographical and slope calculations further challenge the avalanche scenario, pointing out that the terrain would have deflected any landslide away from the tent. Furthermore, the tent's sideways fall did not follow usual avalanche patterns. The group's journey into the woods revealed no evidence of fear, implying a more ordered withdrawal. Between 2015 and 2019, competent investigators from Russia's investigative committee analyzed the initial results and added critical data to support the avalanche scenario. These scientists hypothesized that hurricane-force gusts, severe snowfall, and temperatures as low as -40 degrees Celsius may have contributed to the group's fatal behavior. Despite these disclosures, questions and fresh theories remain. In 2019, the Russian authorities continued to investigate the Dyatlov Pass incident, which it attributed to a slab avalanche. Further investigation and computer simulations conducted by Swiss experts in 2021 validated this notion, indicating that the damage and injuries were caused by a tiny snow slab fall on Kholat Syakhl mountain. While the avalanche idea is the most commonly accepted explanation for the Dyatlov Pass disaster, the actual circumstances are unknown. Ongoing inquiries and scientific studies are aimed at solving the mystery, providing closure to the families, and honoring the brave adventurers who died that night. Other theories. In 2019, a Swedish-Russian expedition crossed the Dyatlov Pass. They proposed that the tragedy was caused by a violent katabatic wind. Katabatic winds are uncommon but can be fatal. During the 1978 Anaris mountain catastrophe in Sweden, strong winds killed 8 hikers and badly maimed another. The similarity of geography between Anaris Mountain and Dyatlov Pass lends credence to the theory that katabatic winds triggered both disasters. The trekkers would have battled to stay inside their tent in Dyatlov Pass's strong katabatic wind. The wisest course of action would have been to cover the tent with snow to keep it from blowing away, and then seek refuge behind the trees. The hikers left a flashlight on top of the tent, maybe to assist them find their way back once the gusts died down. The expedition proposed constructing 2 bivouac shelters. However, one collapsed, burying 4 hikers and suffering serious injuries. Donnie Icar's 2013 book Dead Mountain delves into the infrasound idea. According to this theory, the wind above Kholat Syakhl Mountain created a katabatic vortex that produced infrasound, inducing terror. Icar hypothesized that the infrasound produced bodily and mental distress in the hikers, prompting them to evacuate their tent in panic. They may have calmed down after descending the slope and leaving the infrasound behind. They were unable to find their way back to the tent due to the darkness. 3 hikers died after falling into a dark valley and hitting rocks. 3 possible possibilities involve military testing. The encampment may have been used for a Soviet parachute mining exercise. In one scenario, strong explosions may have panicked the trekkers, forcing them to escape their tents without proper equipment. While several people survived the blasts, they later perished of hypothermia, and those who stole clothing from the dead were killed by additional mine explosions. Parachute mines detonate in the air, causing serious inside injuries but minor external damage, similar to what was discovered on the hikers. These theories are reinforced by sightings of orange orbs in the sky near the site, which could have been military aircraft or parachute mines. The loss of Dubinina's tongue could have been caused by scavenging animals. Signs such as livor mortis, scars, and burns on hair and skin indicate that the bodies were altered after death. The hikers were experienced and unlikely to have put up their tents incorrectly, as depicted in the photographs. Some things contained signs of radiation, and relatives characterized the dead as having an orange complexion and gray hair, pointing to the potential of radiological weapons testing. This radioactive spread would have impacted all of the hikers and their luggage. The discoloration was most likely caused by mummification, which occurs naturally after 3 months of exposure to cold and wind. The early withholding of information by Soviet officials suggests a cover-up, which was regular practice in the late 1980s. All Dyatlov-related data have now been declassified. Paradoxical undressing, a hypothermia-induced behavior in which people remove their garments in reaction to a false sense of warmth, could explain some of the hikers' activities. 6 of the 9 trekkers died from hypothermia, despite several wore additional clothing to remain warm. This theory does not explain the severe injuries discovered on multiple victims. In 2015, Yuri Kuntsevich of the Dyatlov Foundation and Keith McCloskey, an expert on the Dyatlov Pass, visited the site. McCloskey noticed differences in the distances between 2 potential snow shelter locations where some of the hikers were discovered. One location was 80 to 100 meters from the tree where Doroshenko and Krivonishenko's bodies were located. The other recommended location was closer to the tree, allowing for discourse without yelling among individuals in the shelter. Photographs from the 1959 search indicate that the second location, which includes the boulder in the creek where Dubinina's body was discovered, is more likely. The tent's location on the ridge was too close to the spur to allow for extensive snow accumulation, perhaps causing an avalanche. Ridge winds would have pushed snow away from the edge, lowering the avalanche risk. Sergei Sogrin noticed that there was no snow on the ridge peak in 2010. In a 2015 interview, Evgeny Okishev, Lev Ivanov's superior, discussed preparing a return trip to the pass to examine the inexplicable deaths of the remaining 4 hikers. McCloskey stated that after returning from Moscow, Deputy Prosecutor General Urov closed the case. Okishev was also surprised when Klinov, the chief of the Soviet prosecutor's office, spent 3 days at the initial autopsy. After examining the scenario and recording a documentary, Donny Ishar investigated other ideas, which were eventually discounted. These included an attack by the Mansi, or other local tribes, but the Mansi remained quiet and avoided approaching the tent. Another explanation was that the group was assaulted by nature, but no animal traces were discovered, and the hikers would not have left the tent. The concept that severe winds prompted one person to run, followed by others, in an attempt to rescue them, is likewise doubtful, as the tent would have been blown away. The group dynamics were benign, with just modest flirtations and crushes, making it unlikely that a disagreement would lead to violence. There were no narcotics at the scene, just a little flask of medical alcohol that stayed undamaged. One of the bodies had injuries too severe to be inflicted by a struggle. Each explanation sheds light on what happened to the 9 hikers, but none is conclusive. New facts and speculations continue to pique experts and the public's interest in solving the mystery. New evidence. The Dyatlov Pass incident has perplexed people for decades, but new research provides a scientific reason for the catastrophe. A 2019 federal Russian inquiry and a 2021 research suggest that the hikers were killed by a slab avalanche, which occurs when a huge block of snow detaches from a deeper layer and slides downhill. The slab avalanche theory had previously been questioned for a number of reasons, including the site's very low slope angle, the lack of visible traces of an avalanche, confusion about what caused the avalanche, and the victims' odd injuries. However, this notion is supported by a 2021 study published in Communications, Earth and Environment by Swiss scientists Johann Gaume and Alexander Puzrin. Gaume and Puzrin propose that a slab avalanche may have happened even without the usual circumstances for a conventional avalanche. The avalanche most likely erupted just above the tent while the hikers were sleeping, injuring some and forcing them to cut their way out to safety. They speculated that wind may have deposited snow on the slope near the tent, causing the slab avalanche. This would necessitate irregular topography, a cut slope for tent erection, and strong katabatic winds to pile up the snow. These conditions may have caused a slab of snow to fall on the sleeping trekkers, resulting in serious but non-fatal injuries. According to autopsy records, numerous hikers suffered serious chest and head injuries comparable to those observed in car accident victims, confirming the theory that a blizzard while sleeping could have been traumatizing. The hikers most likely fled the tent in terror following the avalanche, which could explain why their bodies were discovered nude and damaged. The majority of the hikers perished of hypothermia as a result of the harsh weather and poor clothes. Gaume and Puzrin validated their theory by replicating the event with weather data. The simulation demonstrated how a slab avalanche would have affected the hikers. The severe injuries seen during the autopsies could have been caused by the rapid snowfall as they lay flat on their backs. This hypothesis does not explain everything about the Dyatlov Pass incident, including why one hiker's tongue was removed, which may have been caused by scavenging animals, but it does provide a scientific alternative to more radical conspiracy ideas. Gaume remarked that they did not answer the enigma, but rather validated the validity of the avalanche theory. The paper includes results from the winter and summer 2021 excursions, as well as modeling. These trips refuted the myth that the slopes of Dyatlov Pass were too moderate for avalanches. The summer excursion discovered natural step-like dips that can result in slab avalanches. These elements may have fooled the experienced hikers into believing their campsite was safe. The researchers discovered that the slopes of these step-like features surpassed 28 degrees, with some being steeper than 30 degrees. The tent was probably built up beneath one of these continuous slopes. The 2021 winter expedition discovered slab avalanches a few miles from Dyatlov Pass. Another trip in January 2022 encountered two experienced mountain guides with bad visibility and heavy gusts, causing their snowmobiles to overturn, just as the 1959 incident. The guides discovered two snow slab avalanches, which vanished within an hour of the snowstorm. 3 weeks after the tragedy, the Dyatlov rescue team discovered no evidence of an avalanche, which had never occurred in the area before. Given that bad weather makes the route impossible to traverse, and minor slab avalanches can vanish fast, the new study backs up previous models and sheds light on how the trekkers died. Although Puzrin and Gaume do not claim to have solved the riddle, their findings provide a credible explanation for the Dyatlov Pass tragedy. They claimed that, while the investigation is ongoing, their role is over. The snow slab or avalanche idea may not be as shocking as government plots or attacks by supernatural monsters, but it provides some solace to the victims' relatives. It offers a plausible explanation for the tragedy, but several uncertainties remain. Russian officials have vowed to utilizing advanced forensics and analysis to learn more about the incident. Gaume and Puzrin studied the data and discovered that the campsite had a minor incline, actually 30 degrees, making it prone to avalanches. Previously, investigators assumed the snow slope was gentler due to the area's varied terrain and precipitation. The hikers' tent trench may have destabilized the snow slab above them. The hikers' notes suggest that strong winds may have contributed to the avalanche. While the snow slab produced worry and tragedy among the hikers, their bedding was on skis, and the rushing snow and hard, inflexible material could have resulted in serious injury. The hikers most certainly attempted to aid one another, but the cold and lack of suitable equipment ultimately led to their deaths. The snow slab avalanche explanation may not be as exciting as beliefs about government cover-ups or weird monsters, but it does bring some relief to the bereaved families. The case is still open, but the new evidence provides a fascinating narrative and a potential reason for the hikers' deaths. With time, new evidence may eventually resolve the Dyatlov Pass enigma, which has gripped the public for decades. Regardless of conspiracy claims, Gaume and Puzrin's scientific explanation for the tragedy is plausible and logical. Russia, Teodora Hadza's theory. In February 2019, Russian officials investigated the Dyatlov Pass incident, a long-standing mystery and tragedy. This decision came after years of pressure from families, the media, and the public who suspected a cover-up. Over 75 theories have been offered about the occurrence, ranging from extraterrestrial abductions and abominable snowmen to radioactive fallout from covert weapons experiments and clashes with indigenous people. The 2019 investigation centered on 3 natural phenomena: avalanches, snow slabs, and hurricanes. Officials discovered no indication of illicit conduct. A 400-page dossier of original case materials was unveiled at a news conference to support their continued search for the truth. Peter Barot, a friend of hiker Igor Dyatlov, attended the press conference and expressed his support for the probe. He commended Dyatlov as a skilled and dependable guy and supported the ongoing hunt for answers to the hikers' fate. Understanding Soviet society at the time is critical to interpreting the research. In the totalitarian Soviet Union, faults were frequently concealed to avoid harsh punishment. Recognizing errors may result in jail, torture, or death. In such circumstances, the government had to create an appearance of complete control and perfection. Teodora Hadza, the founder of DyatlovPass.com, conducted considerable study on the case. She translated Russian papers into English and created a database with all case images, facts, and theories, positioning herself as an expert on the disaster. Hadza provides an alternative explanation for the events on the mountain. After reviewing the facts, she feels the hikers were murdered. Hadza believes that the hikers were afraid and exited their tent in a hurry, encountering armed individuals. She claims a brief struggle happened before the hikers were forced to retreat to the forest line, where they eventually succumbed to the cold. According to Hadza, the perpetrators may have anticipated the cold would kill the hikers, but returned to finish the deed when they detected signs of life, such as a bonfire. Hadza believes the event lasted several hours and included many attacks and rising violence, with the hard mountain conditions exacerbating the disorientation and dread. While Hadza's idea is not without flaws, it does explain the hikers' strange conduct and deaths. She and other scholars are still investigating the Dyatlov Pass incident, which is one of the 20th century's most perplexing mysteries. Thank you for watching this video, and please share your opinions in the comments section below.